One of the stories that we need to pay attention to ahead of the 2026 season is Audi. This is a team that will officially enter Formula 1 at the beginning of the new regulatory era, and even before having their first race in Formula 1, they started the German rivalry with Mercedes. It seems like Audi is very confident in their own ability to perform right off the bat, but whether they can back up their talk is something that only 2026 can show. However, the shots that have been thrown at Mercedes are ones that do need a solid background. Apart from completing a buyout of Sauber, a team that had a partnership with Alfa Romeo, Audi has officially announced that they have secured a minority stake in the Sauber group. This is the first step towards entering F1 in 2026, and quite frankly, a move like this was to be expected, given the fact that they announced a relationship with Sauber back in October. Volkswagen's two most prominent brands, Audi and Porsche, have been given the green light in order to start the negotiating process to enter the sport from 2026 onward, after F1 convinced the multi-million-dollar company that the sport is moving in the direction they want it to. Although Porsche's hit a brick wall with Red Bull, as Steiner explained, two alpha males collided. Audi has had quite an easy time reaching an agreement with Sauber. Prior to reaching an agreement with the Swiss team, the German brand was in talks to complete buyouts on teams like McLaren, Aston Martin and Williams, but it seems like these particular teams had big picture plans ahead of themselves. So after purchasing an initial stake of 25%, and then going on to achieve an additional 75% of Sauber by 2026, with 25% in 2023, 2024 and 2025, Audi is officially in F1. What does that mean for the sport? And why have they started to clash horns with Mercedes, one of the most successful teams in Formula 1? Obviously, this is something that the sport really wants, which is to have engine manufacturers enter as separate teams. Earlier this season, when Wolff was asked about Andretti and his entrance into the sport as an 11th team, he said that he would gladly give that spot to an engine manufacturer like Audi. So, although he's shown respect to what could be one of his team's fiercest rivals from 2026 on, that hasn't been done from the other side. Mercedes and Audi will be Germany's largest engine manufacturers in 2026, and while Mercedes hadn't been particularly wordy about one of their fiercest rivals outside of Formula 1, Audi has already fired many shots at their domestic rivals. Back in August, one of the most successful brands of the Volkswagen Group heated up the competition when they declared on their social media, "Rings are the new stars." Another thing that Audi keeps throwing shots at is the fact that Mercedes isn't building their engines in Germany, but in the UK, more precisely in Brackley. Audi, on the other hand, will be the first German team on the grid to build their own engines in Germany, therefore boosting the economical state of its homeland and the tactical position that the country will have once its brand enters the sport. This is why, in the first press conference of Audi's entrance into Formula 1, the team tweeted, "This is the first time in more than a decade that a Formula 1 powertrain will be built in Germany." With talks like this, Audi has a lot of backing up that they need to do, because, quite frankly, they haven't raced a single race in Formula 1 and are throwing dirt at the team that won 8 consecutive Constructors' Championships. Keep in mind that they also had 7 straight Drivers' Championships in this period, only losing out to Verstappen in 2021 in the fascinating hybrid era that literally propelled Mercedes as one of the best teams to ever do it in this sport. Sure, they're on the back foot now, but by the time Audi enters the sport, Mercedes will likely be fighting for championships, or potentially having won one in the previous period. Audi, on the other hand, has launched a strong campaign with the appointment of Andreas Seidl as CEO of Sauber and the departure of Frederic Vasseur, who went on to manage the Maranello team. A huge challenge lies ahead for Seidl, one of which is setting up a solid duo of drivers. And while many think that Bottas and Zhou will do just fine because they've learned how the car performs by that time and no changes will be necessary, this is unlikely to be the path that Sauber and Audi will take. Sure, Bottas has announced that he's ready for the new challenge, and he is looking forward to Audi's arrival. But by the time Audi takes over Sauber and enters Formula 1 officially, Bottas will be 36 years old. Given that Audi is rumoured to be signing Vettel in 3 years, which would put the German in his 40s, that isn't too old, especially since the team will need someone experienced on whom the other younger driver can rely. The likes of Mick Schumacher have been related to Audi, and although nothing would delight us more, it seems like Mercedes has closed this door for Audi. Whether this was done on purpose, or it was just fate's way of playing with Audi and Schumacher's paths, that's not up to us to discuss. What we can say is that Mick's arrival in Mercedes has definitely made Audi angry, and after the young driver's move, Audi came out with an official announcement that they won't consider Mick as their starting driver from 2026 on. When talking about this situation, and while confirming that Mick was considered a strong candidate for Audi, Adam Baker, the CEO of the brand, said, "Although everyone associates Mick with us, he's chosen to go to Mercedes. We understand his objective was to get back on the Formula One grid as quickly as possible. Our debut is far away, but we want a development driver by the end of 2023. It's very important to have someone who has experience developing our new powertrain in the simulators we have in Nürburgring. Audi appears to be capitalizing on any opportunity to say that it has powertrains and simulators in Germany, its home country. However, it's going to take more than just being the proud German team to win races and potentially championships in an era that is vastly dominated by teams like Red Bull and Mercedes. While many foresee the rivalry between Audi and Mercedes as being a very fierce one, and one in which foul words would be thrown at each other during race weekends, this isn't that much of a bad outcome for a country like Germany. Let's face it, drivers like Schumacher and Vettel have left the sport from 2023 onward, and while they haven't completely closed the door on a potential comeback, the German fans don't have too much to look forward to in the upcoming seasons. To top the loss of 2 drivers from Germany in the upcoming season, Mercedes has lost a lot of ground compared to Red Bull, and quite honestly, now is not a good time to be a fan that supports German teams, or at least teams that originate in Germany but have their headquarters in another country like the UK. It's never a bad thing for the sport to have competition, especially between 2 competitors from the same country. While one of them will definitely come out as a loser when it comes to the numbers and the points, the sole fact that they're representatives of the same country speaks volumes about the impact that the German brands have had and will have in Formula One. As a result, we can't help but notice that in the shots thrown at Mercedes by Audi, there may be a little bit of a marketing source, one that would boost the popularity of both teams and, more importantly, the popularity of their homeland. And keep in mind that Germany has no plans to withdraw from this conflict. While the second Volkswagen brand, Porsche, hasn't been able to agree on working terms with Red Bull, they haven't completely given up on the idea of having their own independent team in the sport. The FIA allows 2 more teams, if Andretti is to enter the sport, to race as separate ones, and while this is unlikely to be done by Porsche, they are currently working on buyout terms with Williams. If this is to see the light of day, then Germany will have 3 of its most prominent brands, Mercedes, Audi, and Porsche, race in Formula One as 3 separate teams. Talk about completing the dream, right? With that said, Audi's shots at Mercedes are something that should be taken seriously, given that the team is looking for solid ground to stand on when it enters the sport in 2026. Drivers like Norris have been related to the team as well, and now that Seidl is the CEO, he will oversee all of the operations, and this is definitely something that will increase the competitiveness level of the Volkswagen brand. Whether it will turn out to be the reality of 2026, only time will tell. What do you think about Audi's shots at Mercedes? Let us know in the comments below.